Now it's very easy to be fooled by this Seamaster watch from Omega. At first glance from the outside it looks completely ordinary, and it's only when you try and move the hands and change the date that you realise something a bit strange is going on. Okay, so this is not behaving normally at all. Normally you would just wind the crown here to change the time, but as I turn it, all it's doing is moving the hour hand forward by 1 hour increment at a time, and it gets stuck when the date tries to change. So not only is it weird, but it's weird and broken. Now my name is Richard and you are very welcome to my channel and this video where I am going to show you the most amazing movement by the guys at Omega. Now the movement is broken, quite badly broken, but I am determined to get this watch up and running so that my man Piers, who owns it, can take it to Africa. Now this little tool is really handy for taking the back off watches like this. In fact, if you don't use it and just use something like a screwdriver or a knife, you're very likely to scratch the back of the watch, which is what you can see has happened here a few times. And yes, that is the top of a Sharpie on the end of my threaded post there. So this is the watch that Omega hot rodded. Underneath this case is the most amazing movement that I've seen in quite a long time. Okay, so we have a circuit board protection plate, a quartz crystal, we have a protection bridge for the coil here, and a bridge with 5 joules in for the going train, so that's at least 10 joules in total, and we have an enormous battery. Now to remove the stem we need to loosen up this little screw, which just slackens off the setting lever a little bit to allow us to remove it. This really is a very attractive movement. It reminds me a little of the Grand Seiko 9F, and there are 17 joules in this movement. No quartz watch has 17 joules. The quality is beyond good. The movement is held in by 2 clamps, so we just need to remove the screws that hold those in and remove the clamps. And it's kept snug inside the case with this little plastic ring, so we kind of have to prise that out as well. It's a little tricky to get this movement ring out, but somehow when you do it, it's really satisfying. Okay, time to take the movement out and then we will get the hands off this watch. You know, this really is an elegant watch. I do like it. So, first thing is we cover the dial in this protective plastic and then bring in the hand levers and just gently remove the hands there. Now we're going to use gravity to put these on the bench. Now to remove the dial we need to release the dial screws. These are implemented really nicely in this watch. You just have to be very careful when you do this sort of thing. And once we've loosened it up, we can just lift it off. No problem at all. Now, the dial is really important, so we have to make sure that we store it very safely in one of these special dial boxes. We're going to start work on the back end of the movement first, so just settling it down into the movement stand. And the first thing we're going to do is remove the battery. A previous person that's been inside this watch has swapped the screw that holds down the clamp there for something quite horrible. But we just take the battery out, put a bit of Rodico on the bench. Rodico is Watchmaker's blue tack, reassuringly more expensive than blue tack, and take out a multimeter. And that's what I kind of expected to see. There is, the battery is dead, pretty much. But that is not what is wrong with this watch. I put a new battery in and it made absolutely no difference at all. So just removing the battery clamp now, and the nasty little screw that holds it in, and the insulation rings. There are two of these. Big one goes on the bottom, smaller O-ring on the top. Now we're going to remove the protection plate for the electronic circuit module. Let's gently lift that up. There's the plate. And there's the module itself. So favourite amongst the culprits for this watch not working is the coil. With a quartz watch, it's very often the coil that is causing the problem. The second thing in the frame would be the electronic circuit module, but we need to get this coil off and we need to test the coil. It doesn't look too bad, but without a microscope it's very, very difficult to tell. The first thing we're going to do is just check that there's any continuity on the coil. Can we pass current right the way down through the coil? So I'm just placing it onto a multimeter here. It's checking that the multimeter is working, but no, there's no current coming through. Now under the microscope we can see why. So just taking up this little loose end here, this is the strand of the coil that we're going to have to fix back onto the connector here. So I'm just using my tweezers. These are very fine pointed tweezers, but our magnification now is pretty large. But we have a problem. My soldering iron is way too big to do this job. So we need to take down the point of the soldering iron. So I'm just going to take that apart now and pop it in the lathe. Okay, so more volts, Igor. This soldering iron is really hot now, so wait for it, there it goes. And just checking again that the multimeter is working before we test the continuity. Notice that the needle goes right to the end. Okay, so should be good now, but No, there's still nothing there. The multimeter's working, but there is no current, still no current coming through that coil. And this is our problem. Difficult to see with the naked eye, but with a microscope you can see it's quite badly damaged. Now, I said I was determined, and I meant it. So we are now going to attempt a repair of the damaged coil. This stuff is like no heat solder that you syringe on. So why not take a moment to subscribe? It's free, and if you hit the little bell icon, you will get to know when any of my new videos come out. So we're just going to put a little bit of this down and pick it up with an oiler. And then with the microscope, we are going to mend the break in the coil. There's also something quite satisfying about this. Now, while it's wet, it won't conduct, but once it's dry, it should. So here goes. Now, who can tell me why the needle stops and doesn't go all the way to the end? Just put your answers in the comments. Okay, so now we've got the coil fixed, we can continue with the disassembly of the watch, and just taking off here the bridge for the powertrain. Just carefully lifting that off. Take out the second wheel, take out the intermediate wheel and the other wheels here, and finally the rotor. So moving on to the crown wheel, just take off the screw for that. The jumper spring on the keyless works. Take out the yoke for sliding pinion and the sliding pinion and the crown wheel, and also the setting lever. We are getting on now. That is pretty much that side of the movement, so just going to swap the movement over now. Now under here are all the wheels that control the funky movement of the hands when you turn the crown, and there they are in all their glorious weirdness. Take off the calendar wheel, and that is that side of the movement pretty much done. And there is the whole of the movement of the Omega 1337. So time to get this cleaned up. Put them in these individual little T-strainers. Cheap and cheerful and very, very effective. I don't use a rotary cleaner. I like to use a... Oh, look at that watch. That is nice. I make that. So going in with the cleaning solution, I actually use 3 solutions. I don't show them all here, but I use cleaning solution, rinse and isopropyl alcohol. Now, I don't just restore watches, I also make them under my own brand, Major, which was my rank when I left the British Army. So take a look at this. This is the Seawolf Bronze. It was the result of a bespoke request from an existing owner, and we liked it so much that we kept it. My name is Richard, I'm a watchmaker and a YouTuber with over 15 million views of me restoring high-end watches. Now with the Seawolf Bronze, I machined the interior of each case myself so the movement fits just right. I make and test every watch myself, and as with all my watches, every owner gets a personalised video of the immersion pressure test and handwritten authenticity documentation. And there's also 2 years warranty, because when you buy a watch from Major Watches, you don't just get a watch. So check out the link in the description. Okay, so let's put this back together now, starting with some lubrication for the sliding pinion yoke. Just place that carefully in, and now the setting lever, just securing that down, and then just checking the operation of these components, and just moving on to the jumper spring here. The screws in this movement are really quite big, which I have to say is quite refreshing. There is no way that that component is getting out anytime soon. We do use this a lot, so it is important to make sure it's nicely lubricated, but not too much. So I'm just cleaning up here with a little bit of reassuringly expensive Rodico, and then put it in place. Nice. Turn the movement over. Now we're going to start to put in a quite different set of wheels, nothing like you would see in a standard watch. These are the components that do that extraordinary function where the hour hand just jumps forward 1 hour when you twist the crown. The silver wheel in the middle of the frame is actually 2 magnetic plates, and it acts like the cannon pinion in a normal watch. This wheel that I'm putting in now, interestingly, has no pinion on it. It's a ratio of 1:1. It's really just a spacer between the magnetic pinion and the advancing wheel that you can see there. In with the sliding pinion, and some lubrication for the hour wheel. Just popping that on there gently, and that is all the wheels. So just going to check that they're all properly aligned, because the next bit is to put on the calendar wheel here and just locate it in that Maltese cross wheel so that it will actually drive it round. Kore wa totomo muzakashi desu. Totomo muzakashi yo ne. This next bit is really difficult. We've got to align all the pivots. I have glossed over it a little bit. And we're going straight into the lubrication of these jewels. So just cleaning up on the other side of the movement now. This is the powertrain that we're about to put in here, just making sure that it's nicely lubricated. First is the minute wheel, and then this little intermediate wheel here. This rotor is magnetic and will do its own thing all the time. Really tricky to get in. And the first of the train wheels, actually it's the second wheel. Just putting the powertrain in really carefully now. And the sweep hand wheel. This is the one that ticks every second. And with a bit of luck, we shall see that soon. On with the bridge. Again, this is a tricky thing to do. So, some lubrication for the crown wheel, and just the retention screw there for the crown wheel. We're actually getting quite close now. Put on the repaired coil with some great big chunky screws. We do like that, Omega. This watch was designed by some very talented and probably quite bored watchmakers. And the amazing thing is that the guys at the boardroom in Omega actually let them build it. So let's protect that coil now we've repaired it with the bridge. Try not to let it get damaged again. In with the first battery isolation disc and putting the stem in and just screwing it down. And just checking the operation here of the keyless works onto the electronic circuit module. Just placing this on the movement really carefully. There's quite a lot of stuff that actually helps you line this up, but it's important to remember the insulation plate that's underneath this actual circuit board. If you don't put that on, it's not going to work. And then the very smart protective plate. Just take a moment to line that up. And there we are. Pop a battery on and it is working. I do like that. It's working. Nice. Alexa, what's the time?
The time is 6:43 p.m.